The NFL is a place where quarterbacks are commonly drafted out of college to fill the QB position. You have Tom Brady out of Michigan, Dan Marino out of Pitt, Chad Pennington out of Marshall, and Donovan McNabb out of Syracuse. All of these quarterbacks came directly from college and went on to have successful NFL careers. However, there have been a few quarterbacks over the NFL's history who have not come from college, and rather they have focused their career originally in the CFL, a Canadian alternate to actual NFL football. Despite the CFL being primarily located up in Canada, you have had a few CFL quarterbacks go on to the NFL and have some success. In this video, I am going to name you 4 CFL quarterbacks who went on to have success at the NFL level after starting out in the CFL. Our first quarterback who signed with an NFL franchise after starting out in the CFL is legendary Vikings quarterback Joe Kapp. At the University of California, Joe Kapp would be a solid quarterback for 3 seasons. While he would throw just 7 touchdowns to 28 picks, on the ground he would combine for over 1,000 yards throughout the first 3 seasons of his college career. He would finish 5th in the 1958 Heisman Trophy voting and would lose in the Rose Bowl. Kapp would actually be selected in the 18th round of the 1958 NFL Draft by Washington. However, Washington would never contact him about his draft rights and he would become an undrafted free agent. In 1959, following the end of the draft, he would sign with the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL. He would spend 2 years with Calgary as the backup quarterback, and in 1961, he would sign with the BC Lions. The BC Lions were an expansion team, and Kapp was chosen to be the franchise starter there. The BC Lions under Kapp, they would have major success. In 1963, they would have their first winning season and qualify for the playoffs. They would lose in the finals of the Grey Cup Championship. The Grey Cup Championship is the Super Bowl version of the CFL, and in 1964, he would bounce back, winning the Grey Cup this time, 34-24. After the 1966 season, Joe Kapp would announce that he was returning to the NFL. Joe Kapp's legacy in the CFL is known as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league's history. He would combine for 22,000 passing yards, going for 136 touchdowns to 129 picks. He would also make the CFL Hall of Fame in 1984. Kapp would ultimately decide to join the Minnesota Vikings organization before the 1967 season. He would be reunited with former GM Jim Finks. This was the guy who had brought Kapp to the CFL in the first place. He would also be reunited with a CFL head coach. The CFL head coach would be future NFL Hall of Famer and CFL Hall of Famer Bud Grant. Bud Grant became one of the greatest coaches in NFL history and one of the most evolutionary coaches in league history. In his first year with the Vikings, Kapp would go 3-7-3 as the team's starting quarterback. The Vikings would struggle that year as Kapp threw just 8 touchdowns to 17 picks. The next year, Kapp would go 8-6 as the team's starting quarterback. He would throw 10 touchdowns to 18 picks, and he improved a lot in his second season. The Vikings would also qualify for the playoffs for the first time in team history. Kapp's best game during the 1968 season would occur in the first week of the season. He would throw for 3 touchdowns, going for 168 yards while completing 80% of his passes. He had a near-perfect quarterback rating while rushing for 26 yards on the ground. Kapp would also finish the year 3rd in rushing yards by a quarterback in the NFL, just behind future Vikings quarterback Fran Tarkenton. Against the Baltimore Colts in the playoffs, the Vikings would lose the game 24-14. Kapp would finish the game throwing for 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in the loss. In the 1969 season, Kapp would face off against the Baltimore Colts in the first week of the season. Kapp that game would throw for 7 touchdowns to 2 picks while passing for 449 yards. The passing touchdowns record would be broken by Kapp, with his 7 touchdowns being an NFL record which still stands to this day. Kapp's 449 passing yards would be a team record which would hold up for the Vikings for nearly 30 years. That was until Vikings quarterback Tommy Kramer would obliterate the record in 1986. Kapp would finish the 1969 season as one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. He would throw for over 1,700 yards while completing 50% of his passes. He would throw for 19 touchdowns to 13 picks. He would also go 12-1 as the team's starting quarterback, while becoming 2nd place in the NFL MVP honors and earning his first career Pro Bowl. In the first round of the playoffs against the Rams, Kapp would have a game-winning scramble to seal a Vikings victory. The Vikings had been down 17-7 in the middle of the game. However, Kapp's game-winning scramble would secure a 23-20 victory. A week later against the Cleveland Browns in the NFL championship game, Kapp would throw for 1 touchdown along with rushing for an additional touchdown on the ground. His 23-7 victory over the Cleveland Browns would send the Vikings to Super Bowl IV. It was their first Super Bowl appearance in franchise history. In Super Bowl IV against the Kansas City Chiefs, Kapp would be criticized for his performance. He would throw 2 key interceptions in the 4th quarter, and the Vikings would lose the game 23-7. Despite going 12-1 as the team's starting quarterback, along with making a Super Bowl, Joe Kapp and the Vikings would not re-sign in the 1970 season. He would spend 1 more season with the Boston Patriots that year. However, after the 1970 season, at the age of 32, Joe Kapp would be out of football. In the 1980s, Kapp would be the head coach of the California football program, the place he had played as the team's former starting quarterback. In 1982, he would be a part of an infamous play in which California would beat Stanford in miracle fashion on the final play of the game. Kapp would also have a 1-year stint as the BC Lions GM during the 1990 season. Tragically, in May of 2023, Joe Cap would pass away after a battle with Alzheimer's disease. Despite passing away in May of 2023, Cap's legacy will always be remembered. Our next story of a quarterback who had a successful NFL career after starting out in the CFL, we have to start back in the year 1977. Our story begins with 1977 Rose Bowl MVP Warren Moon. In his final season as Washington's starter, Moon would throw for 11 touchdowns, going over 1,500 yards, while going 8-5 as the team's starting quarterback. Despite the successful 1977 campaign for Washington, Moon would go undrafted in the 1978 NFL Draft. Following the end of the NFL Draft, Moon would sign a contract with the Montreal Eskimos of the CFL. Upon his arrival in the CFL, Moon would be named the starting quarterback of Montreal. He would have a successful stint as he would lead Montreal to 5 straight Grey Cup titles between 1978 and 1982. Moon would win the Offensive Player of the Year and MVP award multiple times in the CFL. Moon would lead the CFL in passing touchdowns 3 times, along with leading the league in passing yards 2 times. His success at the CFL level would draw some NFL attention after the 1983 season, and he would sign a contract with the Houston Oilers. During Moon's 6-year stint in Montreal, he would lead them to a 41-17-1 record. Moon's record would also be one of the greatest by any quarterback in CFL history. He would combine for 144 passing touchdowns to go with 77 picks and also 2,100 yards. In the 2001 season, a year after Moon had retired from the NFL after his age 44 campaign, he would be inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame. The start of Moon's career in the NFL was less than ceremoniously. He would go 3-13, 4-12, and 5-10. He would lead the league in interceptions in 1986, and the pressure was on him going into the 1987 season. In 1987, Warren Moon would have his breakout campaign. He would throw for 2,800 yards, going with 21 touchdowns to 8 picks. He would also rush for 3 touchdowns on the ground, and he would go 7-5 as the Oilers' starting quarterback. The Oilers would finish the year at 9-6, along with qualifying for the playoffs for the first time since the 1980 season. Moon would also lead a playoff victory over the Seattle Seahawks in overtime, becoming the first quarterback to win a playoff game in Houston since 1980. Moon would cap off his successful 1987 campaign by playing in the NFL's Pro Bowl event. In the 1988 season, Moon would build off a successful campaign in 1987. He would throw for 2,300 yards, scoring with 17 touchdowns to 8 picks. He would go 7-4 as the Oilers' starting quarterback while making another Pro Bowl. The Oilers would once again qualify for the playoffs as well. They would finish the year at 10-6, third in their division. They would win a wildcard victory over the Cleveland Browns 24-23. However, in the divisional round, they would lose in brutal fashion to the Buffalo Bills. In 1990, Warren Moon would have a career season. He would pass for 4,300 yards, going with 33 touchdowns to 13 picks. He would go 8-7 as his team's starting quarterback. Not only would Warren Moon's passing yards and passing touchdowns lead the entire NFL out of all starting quarterbacks, he would also break the Houston Oilers franchise record for passing touchdowns with 33. Moon, however, would miss the 1990 NFL playoffs due to an injury. He would miss the game with a dislocated shoulder, and they would start Cody Carlson in his place. The same year that Moon would win NFL Offensive Player of the Year, in a game against the Kansas City Chiefs, he would throw for 527 yards, one of the rare few quarterbacks to throw for over 500 yards in a single game. In 1991, Moon and the Oilers would win their conference for the first time in recent memory. Moon would throw for 4,300 yards, along with 23 touchdowns to 21 picks, and they would go 11-5. The 1991 season would also mark Moon's third career playoff win in the NFL. He would win 17-10 over the New York Jets, who that year had gone 8-8 with Pro Bowler Ken O'Brien. Moon and the Oilers would once again fall in the divisional round to the Denver Broncos, 24-26. Moon was heavily criticized up to this point due to his failure to win in big playoff moments. He would win in the wildcard round, however against top opponents in the divisional round, he would always seem to lose. By the time his NFL career would come to an end, Moon would have a combined record of 3-7 in the playoffs. He failed to make it to the NFC or AFC championship game, he wouldn't even make it to a Super Bowl, and he would never make it past the divisional round. In both 1992 and 1993, the Oilers would still qualify for the playoffs. In 1992, they would blow a 35-3 lead to the Buffalo Bills and backup quarterback Frank Reich in the wild card. In 1993, and what would ultimately be Warren Moon's final season with the Oilers would go 12-4 and once again qualify for the playoffs. They would win their division and earn a playoff bye, and in the divisional round against the Kansas City Chiefs and quarterback Joe Montana, they would blow a 10-0 lead and would lose the game 28-20. After the 1993 playoffs, the Oilers would trade Warren Moon to the Minnesota Vikings in exchange for a 4th and a 3rd round pick. Moon would finish his Oilers tenure with 3,300 passing yards, 196 touchdowns to 166 picks. After being traded to the Minnesota Vikings, he would start 3 years there as the team's starting quarterback. He would make 2 more Pro Bowls with the team, and he would also lead them to the playoffs in his first year there. They would go 9-7, however, they would lose in the wildcard round to the division rival Chicago Bears, 33-17. Moon's 1995 campaign with the Vikings was one of his better seasons. He would throw for 4,300 yards to go along with an 8-8 record. He would throw for 33 touchdowns to 14 picks, and he would also make another Pro Bowl that season. This was also the Vikings' passing touchdowns record for a single season. The Vikings would have Warren Moon as their starting quarterback for 3 seasons. In his final year with the team, he would break his collarbone in the middle of the 1996 season, and he would not be re-signed to another contract. He would finish his career with the Vikings' 7th all-time in passing yards and passing touchdowns to this very day. Before the 1997 season, Moon at the age of 40 would sign a 2-year contract with the Seattle Seahawks. He would actually be a Pro Bowl starting quarterback in the 1997 season. He would go 7-7 as Seattle's starter, however they would miss the playoffs. After spending 2 years with the Seahawks, Moon would finish his career with the Seahawks' 8th all-time in passing yards and passing touchdowns. He would sign a 2-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs before calling it quits after the 2000 season. In 2006, Warren Moon would be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. It followed 5 years previous in which he had been inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame. Moon's career numbers still ranked top 16 in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. He would actually unretire his jersey and would give it to quarterback Cam Ward, who the Titans had taken with the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Our third story would begin during the 1993 college football season. Senior quarterback Jeff Garcia would lead San Jose State to a 2-9 record. Garcia that year would throw for 21 touchdowns and 16 picks, along with throwing for 2,600 yards through the air. He would also rush for over 300 yards on the ground. After the end of the 1993 season, Garcia would finish 3rd all-time in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns in San Jose history. Despite a prominent career at San Jose State, Garcia would go undrafted in the 1994 NFL Draft. He would, however, sign a contract shortly after with the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL. After spending the 1994 season as Calgary's backup quarterback, Garcia would take over as a starter in the 1995 season. He would go 15-3 as the team's starting quarterback while throwing for 25 touchdowns and 7 picks to go along with 3,000 yards. In 1997, Garcia would throw for over 4,500 yards going with 33 touchdowns to 14 picks. They would make the playoffs once again, however they would not make it to the Grey Cup championship game. In 1998, however, Calgary would return to the Grey Cup championship game, with Garcia having the best game of his career. He would win the game's MVP honors along with leading a game-winning drive to seal a victory, 23-22. After the season came to an end, Garcia would announce that he was returning back to the NFL for the first time since being undrafted in the 1994 draft. He would sign a 1-year contract with the San Francisco 49ers to be the backup quarterback to Steve Young. Early on in the 1999 season, Steve Young would actually suffer a season-ending concussion, which would actually end his career. Garcia would see some action being the team's backup quarterback. He would finish the season with a 2-8 record, going with 11 touchdowns to 11 picks. In the 2000 offseason, after Steve Young retired, the 49ers would have a quarterback battle for the starting position. Garcia would face off against rookie 3rd-round pick Giovanni Carmazzi for the starting QB position. Garcia would actually beat him out and would win the starting QB position handedly. The 2000 season for Jeff Garcia was one of the best of his career. He would throw for 4,300 yards, going with 31 touchdowns to 10 picks. While the 49ers did go 6-10 that year, Garcia would make his first career Pro Bowl, and he was also top 5 in both passing yards and passing touchdowns in the NFL that year. In 2001, Garcia and the 49ers would go 12-4, along with winning their division for the first time since the 1998 season. Garcia that year would throw for 3,500 yards, going with 32 touchdowns to 12 picks. The 49ers and Garcia would fall to the Packers and quarterback Brett Favre 25-15 in the wild card round. The 49ers in the 2002 season would go 10-6. Garcia would make his 3rd straight Pro Bowl, and he had one of the best seasons of his career. 3,500 yards, going with 21 touchdowns to 10 picks. He also was pretty effective on the ground as a runner. Garcia that year would lead a miracle comeback over the New York Giants in the wild card round of the playoffs. This would be his first career playoff win and one of the biggest comebacks in playoff history. After the 2002 season came to an end for the 49ers, head coach Steve Mariucci would be fired and would be replaced with veteran head coach Dennis Erickson. The 2003 season for Jeff Garcia was one of the worst of his career. He would go 5-8 as the team's starting quarterback, and he would struggle due to not only injuries, but also the coaching scheme changing. The next offseason, Garcia would lead the 49ers and would sign with the Cleveland Browns on a 4-year contract worth $25 million. For Garcia, he would do alright as a Brown. He would go 3-7 as the team's starting quarterback. He would also have a 99-yard touchdown, which is the NFL record for the longest passing touchdown in history. However, his 3-7 record, along with just 10 touchdowns and 9 picks, would get him released after the season. After a brief stint with the Detroit Lions during the 2005 season, Garcia would be released once again, and everyone thought at the age of 36 that Garcia's NFL career was over. However, veteran head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Andy Reid, would decide to give Jeff Garcia one last chance. He would sign him to a 1-year veteran minimum contract in the 2006 season. After Donovan McNabb tore his ACL in the middle of the season, Garcia would step up for the Eagles. He would throw for 10 touchdowns and 2 picks while going 5-1 as a team's starting quarterback. He would finish fourth in the NFL Comeback Player of the Year award. He would win 3 straight games against the Eagles' rivals and would secure the NFC East for the first time since the 2004 season. The Eagles would finish with a 10-6 record and would play the New York Giants in the wild card round. Against the Giants, Garcia would complete 54% of his passes on 31 attempts, going for 1 touchdown and 154 yards through the air. He would lead a game-winning drive, which would result in a game-winning field goal and his second career playoff victory. Despite losing the next week to the New Orleans Saints, Garcia would earn the respect of Eagles fans. It would also earn him a new contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 3-year deal. Garcia during the 2007 season would lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back to the playoffs for the first time since the 2005 season. Garcia would throw for over 2,400 yards while going 8-5 as the team's starting quarterback. He would also throw for 13 touchdowns to 4 picks. Garcia and the Buccaneers would fall to the New York Giants in the wildcard round 24-14. Garcia would make his 4th career Pro Bowl. However, in the 2008 season, he would only go 6-5 as the team's starting quarterback with him dealing with injuries. Tampa would release Garcia at the beginning of the 2009 season, and he would sign a few 1-year contracts with the Raiders, Eagles, and Texans. However, after the 2011 season, at the age of 41, Garcia would call it quits from his NFL career. Our final story of this video begins in Boston College in the 1984 season. Quarterback Doug Flutie was coming off a season in which he had thrown for 3,400 yards, going with 27 touchdowns to 11 picks. Flutie would have an iconic moment that would go down in football history with his Hail Flutie moment against Miami, winning the game 47-45. He would also win the Cotton Bowl with a 10-2 record to finish the year after beating Houston in that game. Flutie, after being drafted by the St. Louis Rams, would see no action with them as he would sign with the USFL. He would spend a few years with the Chicago Bears in the mid-1980s. He would throw for 3 touchdowns and 2 picks as being the team's backup quarterback. He would even play in a playoff game in the 1987 season. And after spending 1 year in New England with a brief stint in which he had started a few games, he would be out of the NFL. In 1990, Doug Flutie would sign a contract with the BC Lions of the CFL. In his second year with the team, he would go 10-6 as the team's starting quarterback while throwing for over 6,600 yards to go along with 34 touchdowns, 24 picks. He would also rush for 14 touchdowns on the ground. He would win the league's MVP award and would become an All-Star for the first time in his career. In 1992, Flutie would sign a massive contract with the Calgary Stampeders to be the team's starting quarterback. He would throw for 32 touchdowns and 30 picks while having a hair under 6,000 yards and completing a hair under 60% of his passes. He would go 13-5 as the team's starting quarterback. They would make the playoffs and would win the Grey Cup. This would be Flutie's first Grey Cup in his career. By the end of the 1998 CFL season, Doug Flutie had cemented himself as a team legend, along with being one of the best quarterbacks in league history. He was projected to be a future Hall of Famer. He would win 3 Grey Cup championship games. He was a 3-time MVP. He was a 6-time All-Star. He led the league in passing yards multiple times, and he was also the franchise leader in passing yards for both of his franchises he had played for. Flutie would finish his CFL career with 41,000 yards, to go along with 270 touchdowns to 155 picks. During the 1998 offseason, Doug Flutie would receive a contract offer from the Buffalo Bills. It was a veteran minimum contract, and it was meant for him to compete in training camp as a backup quarterback. Flutie would win the backup quarterback job and would enter the 1998 campaign right behind starting quarterback Rob Johnson. Rob Johnson had been paid a massive contract by the Buffalo Bills to be the successor to quarterback Jim Kelly. Johnson would actually get injured early on in the 1998 campaign. It would give Doug Flutie a second chance at the NFL. Flutie, as the Bills quarterback, would go 7-3 as the team starter. He would win NFL Comeback Player of the Year, along with making his first and only career Pro Bowl. He would throw for 2,700 yards to go along with 20 touchdowns to 11 picks, while having an additional rushing touchdown on the ground. Flutie was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league that season. Flutie and the Bills would also defeat future Hall of Famers Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, and Steve Young. Flutie mania would begin to grip the nation of both Buffalo and the NFL itself. Flutie's comeback from CFL quarterback to NFL superstar had become one of the greatest stories in sports. Despite falling in the wild card to the Miami Dolphins 24-17, Flutie would cement himself as the future starting quarterback in Buffalo. He would sign a 4-year contract worth $22 million with the Bills, and he was expected to be the team's franchise starter for the foreseeable future. Flutie would build off his 1998 campaign, with him going 10-5 as the Bills starting quarterback. He would throw for 3,100 yards, going off 19 touchdowns to 16 picks. The Bills would qualify for the playoffs with an 11-5 record. However, Doug Flutie would not start this playoff game. Instead, it would controversial to be starting quarterback Rob Johnson. The choice for the Bills not to start Doug Flutie in this playoff game had a lot to do with the fact that they had just paid Rob Johnson a lot of money and on a massive contract. The Bills wanted to see what Johnson could do in the playoffs. They were coming off a game in which Johnson had tossed 2 touchdowns in a decisive victory over the Indianapolis Colts. Johnson in his one playoff performance would ultimately struggle as the Bills starter. He would complete less than 50% of his passes as the Buffalo Bills lost the game 22-16. They would lose on the Music City Miracle, with the team losing, and this would be Johnson's one and only playoff start in his career. The Bills would never make the playoffs again under Doug Flutie, and they wouldn't make it back to the playoffs until the 2017 season. Flutie would finish the 2000 season with the Buffalo Bills before being released after the season. He would go 4-1 in 2000 before signing a 4-year contract with the San Diego Chargers. He would act as a mentor quarterback to rookie quarterback Drew Brees, and he would even start the entire 2001 season. This would include an upset victory over the Buffalo Bills. Flutie's scramble would secure a victory over his former team, along with getting him revenge that he had sorely been lacking. He would sign with the New England Patriots on a 1-year contract in 2005, and he would perform the NFL's final dropkick ever in team history. Doug Flutie would announce his retirement from football after the 2005 season came to an end. In this video, I have named you 4 quarterbacks who came from the CFL who would go on to have NFL success. You have the Hall of Famer Warren Moon, you have the multi-time Pro Bowler Jeff Garcia, and you have the massive underdog story in Doug Flutie. It is extremely unlikely, if not for the contributions of Joe Cap, that Flutie, Moon, or Garcia would have even gotten chances at the NFL level. Hello again, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. I also wanted to answer the fact about the previous video and why I didn't do a voiceover for that. The Philadelphia Eagles tribute is a bit of a trailer to a video I am working on, a huge art project I've been working on since January. I am hoping to show it to you all by the end of the fall. It is one of the hardest videos I have been working on. The plan going forward is to release a video every 1 to 2 weeks. I will say as well, the every first round pick for quarterbacks in the NFL draft, those videos are pretty much complete. I will go back and do the 80s and 70s drafts if that is wanted by you guys. Just let me know in the comments below. With all that out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day, and I hope you all stay cool.